Welcome back to the next edition of The Couch as we deep dive into marketing and have a look at exactly what's happening, what's trending in this new world that we're living in. I saw some figures recently for Q1 2020 from the IPA Bellwether report that suggests that in particular in the UK, advertising budgets are falling at the fastest rate since the last recession. Only about 14%, particularly of UK businesses, are finding that their marketing campaigns are continuing as planned. Well, there's a lot of people cutting back. There's also a lot of others that are pivoting their businesses today and actually starting to even find opportunities in this new world. So we're going to deep dive a little bit into that and have a bit of fun as well. So we are on the couch, but obviously virtually. And joining me on the couch for this episode is Paul McCrory. He's the Group Industry Director of Facebook. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Tony, how you going?
Good, mate. Nice to see you comfy on the couch. You made your coffee and nice and safe at home.
Even stuck a pair of jeans on for you today, Tony. Most dressed up I've been in about 8 weeks, so it's quite...
So normally you're in your pajamas or something like that, maybe, with the camera switched off.
Yeah.
Awesome. So maybe, Paul, just to start off with, do you want to give us a very quick introduction to your role at Facebook?
Yeah, sure. So I've been at Facebook for 7 years. The role is essentially I lead our customer teams. So anybody that's out in the market with our customer agency partners, creative teams, etc., like that. So yes, lead those. We have our business broken up into 7 industry teams, which I'm responsible for. So very keen on trends within the industry, trying to drive results and impact for the industry and for the verticals, and just building the team out, really.
Fantastic. I did see, obviously coming on this call, that there was a comment just recently in a conference call with Mark Zuckerberg that he stated, like, in the time of disaster, people really rely more on social services. We're seeing surges in traffic, especially in areas most affected, which is great to see that, you know, there's a lot of people turning to social. So we're going to probably kick off the interview just by looking at some consumer trends, as you mentioned. Maybe you can share a few of those that you're seeing within Facebook that you're finding as things are trending for consumers, especially on your platform.
Yeah, look, I think even before that, there's how do you say it? Sometimes the best in humanity comes from the darkest times, right? Which is nothing to do with social media. It's just in general. That comes in leadership. It comes in people. It comes in so many different ways. When people are faced with hardship, they can sort of buckle underneath it or turn into the best versions of themselves, right? I think we're seeing a lot of that happening, which is heartening all over the world. So with what's happening with social media or the internet overall, we're definitely seeing a huge surge. I think in many affected areas, we're seeing internet usage double. And you know what we're seeing is that it's like, you know, every day is a weekend. So weekend traffic is obviously really high, but every day is like a weekend, which is interesting. Also, the interesting thing is that it's across all demographics. So which then, of course, creates some quite unique opportunities for marketers when they're trying to reach certain audiences, because a lot of older people are spending a hell of a lot more time there as well. Getting into our services, you know, in many ways, I think that we're seeing the platforms actually step up and get back to the mission of the business, which is connecting people, full stop. Regardless if that's friends, family, groups, information around COVID. I believe that, you know, in times of crisis like this, we're starting to see the social media networks be able to deliver on what the mission was, which is great. In terms of when we're looking at the trends, the big trend is we're seeing a massive spike in video. Video calling via Messenger and WhatsApp is huge, both in user numbers and time spent. I'm sure you're like, look at us now, right? We're on a video call, right? But we're seeing people doing that all over the place. We're also seeing new applications come out of nowhere, right? And we'll touch a little bit on some of the stuff we're doing later. So that's good. Another really big trend is groups. So people are, and I can give you a couple of examples if that's all right, but we're seeing fun use cases. We're seeing, you know, emotive use cases, and then we're seeing some really just practical use cases. So on the fun side, you've got people There's one called the bin outing group, which is people are just bloody well pissed off that they can't get out of the house, right? And so they're taking any opportunity they can to get dressed up and feel like they're having fun. Go and look at the group. I think there's about 1,200 members now in Australia, and it's people getting properly dressed up for a night out just to take the bins out, and doing fun things. And so that's, it's creating that sense of relief and just of humor, really, when people are just trying to escape, I suppose, right? The second one is which is more around, we're seeing a lot of groups in Australia at the moment being set up and people engaging with them just to try and help their communities. That one is adopt a mom and pop. It's like properly tearjerker, to be honest, but it's when you've got older people who are vulnerable, not mobile, and just struggling through this. And these groups have been set up to try and get younger people who are more mobile and have got can just do stuff to go and essentially adopt the mom and pop. So adopt the older person in your community and help them. All the way through to people, there was a struggle here whereby people with type 1 diabetes were struggling to get the right medicine, right? And so these pharma groups and what have you all collaborated together to make sure that people in need can actually get access to the medicine and the pharmaceuticals that they need to do that. And so we're just seeing, everywhere from fun to sort of heart tear-jerking to real, actually, as in medical need that's being used. So that's good to see as well.
Yeah, I think it's such an easy platform, obviously, for users to use. Just going back to what you're saying before about video, because you did share with me some of the stats on that. Video calling, as you said, more than 700 million daily actives are being used across WhatsApp and Messenger for calling. Also, what was it? Live video. I think people are obviously using live video a lot on Facebook now.
Yeah.
There's more than 800 million daily actives. And you also mentioned there's an exciting kind of new announcement around messenger rooms in the sense of video.
Yeah. And so look, one of the things that we're trying to do as a business is to make sure that we are developing the right suite of services that can help people through this time. And some of that is just COVID related, and some of it's more longer term trends that we're seeing. But messenger rooms is essentially, we are seeing through our portal device or through just people calling via Messenger or WhatsApp on their phones, or it might be the amount of video calling is just going through the roof, right? So messenger rooms is a way that we are just going to make that experience much easier, and that you can also connect with much greater groups of people directly when they're live. So you don't have to schedule a call. You can just see if they're live, and then you can ping into a video call with them, which just is a much more natural piece of behavior. The other thing is that we're increasing the number of people you can have on WhatsApp from 4 to 8 as well on a video call. And there's going to be other really cool things like enhancing the backgrounds within 360 backgrounds. So you could be in Hawaii, for example, whilst you're sitting in Parramatta, and it's a 360 background that's moving just to make the whole experience much better. I've got my family are back in Ireland, and I just bought my sisters, both of our sets of parents, my wife's parents and my mum, and a couple of my friends actually who have just had newborn kids, the portal device, because from a video calling perspective, it's awesome. It just brings a bit of fun back into life, right? So I'm definitely a user, and I tell you what, most people around Australia are as well.
So how do we kind of take some of that, Paul, from a business perspective? Because obviously it makes perfect sense in a social thing, as you're giving some examples there, and for all of us to connect socially. With COVID, it's brought us all kind of internal and starting to use technology a lot more. But how do you think businesses now can learn from this and even start enhancing this between building that communication now a little bit more, whether it's fun or whatever, but certainly using some of these great facilities for customer communication?
Yeah, look, maybe would it be useful if I can give you some of the trends we're seeing at an industry level, just overall?
Yeah, that'd be great.
And then it all kind of merges together, right? So, three big things we were finding from the industry where people were, first of all, wanting to, first and foremost, we're trying to work out how they can keep their employees safe, through this pandemic. There is people are at home, they're not as connected with their colleagues. People are worried about mental health and well-being and all that sort of stuff. And so executives and CEOs within companies are really trying to work out how to do that first and foremost. once you get that sort of, and nobody's got it perfect, right? But everybody's working hard at it. And, you know, we've got a range of tools there that are trying to help people do that. But once that's kind of gotten into a better place, the next thing that people are really thinking about from a marketing lens and from a business lens is, how do you re-emerge from COVID? So once the dust kind of settles and you're thinking about business models and new customer segments and whatever it might be, how do these businesses, because it's competitive out there, some companies may not get through this, some industries may not get through this, and many new competitors are coming out of the woodwork that didn't used to be in your competitive set before. And so there's a real big need at the moment to work out how you can emerge post-COVID. And then the final one will be, we're getting a lot of questions at the moment around what role can our platforms and other tech platforms do to help aid the emerge out of COVID. But then once we get back to normal, what is the new normal going to look like, right? And so what do these technology platforms look like? A couple of standouts for me. You know, there's some funny ones. I don't know if you've heard of a term called the lipstick effect. The lipstick effect was, I think it was coined by an old CEO of the Estee Lauder Group. I'll come back to you and give you the exact details, but it's whereby people buy tons of stuff through GFC, through now, but they're not going to go and buy the fur coat, but they'll buy the lipstick, and they'll buy loads of lipstick or loads of, you know, the smaller product, right? And I think there was a stat on Instagram, something like the amount of like nail tutorials on Instagram is up 450%. So people going live to teach people to do things that they would typically get a service from and do it themselves at home. And then obviously there's cross-sell opportunities within that, right? So cosmetic companies doing tutorials and then selling a product. You know, baristas doing stuff and then selling you home coffee beans or a Breville coffee machine or something like that. So there's all these really nice use cases whereby people are, you know, they're trying to take your standard behavior you want to have and bringing it into your living room behavior and then using that as a way to engage. The industries I think that we've seen major spikes in. So you're looking at home fitness, everybody's kind of across that. We're seeing a lot there. A lot of the food delivery guys. So, you know, HelloFresh, Marty Spoon, these types of people, sometimes they're so inundated at the moment that it's really difficult to even keep up with demand. And so people are trying to, you know, manage customer service alongside the huge demands that are coming there. So, you know, sometimes there's pressure on high demand as well. So that's interesting. From a challenging perspective, you know, it's I think the most challenged industry globally is travel and tourism, because, well, you know, we're seeing borders closed internally in the country, international borders closed for quite a while. But, you know, out of that, one of the things I would say that has stood out for me in that industry would be, I think the guys at South Australia Tourism, I would make a special mention to Brent and the team over there. Brett Hill, but it's like, you know, they have, you had bushfires, then you had COVID, right? It's like a double whammy for industry that's reliant on people going and doing stuff, right? And I think the term at the minute is that Australia needs a holiday. It just does. We all feel like we kind of need a bit of a break. But one of the things they've done is they haven't sacrificed their creativity. They haven't sacrificed their guile and you know the amount of work they're putting into this stuff. And so I think that they're coining it like living room tourism, whereby a good example would be, we know that people have to cook at home, so they're bringing a chef from South Australia to help people with cooking tutorials at home, which then reminds those people about the destination. So when they're ready to travel, guess what? You're going to go there. So creative ways of thinking. How do you think about this consumer change and bring your brand into the living room so that when people are ready to leave the living room, they come to you?
Yeah, it's an interesting way. And again, it goes back to that pivoting of trying to think about, you know, how do we still keep front of mind, you know, with our brand for when things are back and open and to some kind of normality. Tourism's an interesting one, as you mentioned. I know there's something like 1 in 13 jobs in Australia is related to tourism. So it's such a big one. There's other industries, I think, that are also kind of challenged. You know, obviously the fitness industry, but I know, I think you and I spoke about one Peloton that's doing quite well for the indoor cycling around the world. And also Royal Caribbean. I mean, the cruise liners have taken a bit of a hammering over COVID-19, but Royal Caribbean are doing kind of using Facebook as almost like a virtual experience of being on a cruise with all the activities that you would normally do. You can do them with your children through Facebook.
Yeah, look, so the Peloton one's super interesting. They had 23,000 people live stream a Peloton spin class, which is the equivalent of half of the London Marathon, right? On a spin class. It's unbelievable. Shares of the company went up 30% in 30 days. So we're seeing these things emerge out of that. Now, if you're at home doing your spin class and you've bought a bike that costs that amount of money and you're engaging with it and they've nailed it, you're probably going to keep doing that, right? And so in many ways, I think that you've got some people who are just kind of well positioned for it, and then you've got other industries out there that are pivoting. So I don't know if you've seen the meme, which is so let me take a step back. So one of the bigger things for more traditional industries is how do they transform into the digital world, right? Really quickly to try and capture people's living at home, working from home, isolation behavior, right? Otherwise, you might become totally irrelevant over time. And the meme was what created your digital transformation? Was it your CEO, your CTO, or COVID? And in many ways, COVID is done in a couple of months, what people have been trying to do for many years, right? Because it's forced the world inside of their homes, which means that you no longer have access to physical things that you had before, which has meant that companies have had to go and invest really heavily to go and capture that person. I think banking is a super interesting one there, because the consumer now is more digital than ever. Services are available more readily. New competitors are bouncing into the market. But when I deal with my retail bank now, I've always been dealing with them on my phone, but I have been conducting a new mortgage thing on my app. And on the phone, whereas previously I would have went to the branch to go and do that. Whereas now I'm not going to go to the branch; I'm going to do it on my phone. And so that's a really good example where the banks are going to try and win the digital consumer.
What are you talking about retail banking? What about retail in general? Because I know obviously retail has been hammered quite heavily with people not being able to go into the traditional shops. Myer in particular, I think you found have started pivoting towards e-commerce. What other trends have you found in the retail sector?
Yeah, look, there's no doubt. Well, when consumer confidence is back and people are out of jobs and don't have as much discretionary budget, they don't buy the things that they used to buy typically, and so that just typically has a flow-on effect in most industries, right? So retail, globally is getting a bit tough, to be fair. However, what they're doing is they're quickly pivoting their strategies to online, right? So people still need stuff, and people still going to buy stuff, right? But the companies that are pivoting very quickly to online are the ones that will win. There was I know there was an article from Jeff over at Myer in terms of how quickly they had pivoted their strategy and the uptake in online sales really quickly. So they were having to get a lot of the people who would be in physical stores to be fulfilling the supply chain for digital, to fulfill actually the orders for digital. And so that's a good example of a big traditional company being able to pivot quite quickly. What is interesting though as well is that a lot of companies now that have been digital first or digital natives are now competing very, very, very directly with some of the more traditional guys. And so there is a bit of a tug of war there. And I think the companies that are more nimble and consumer first will be the ones that will win through this. And some other companies may struggle at the end of it, to be honest. That was that. The other thing that's we've seen happening a lot within the retailers is that they're pivoting their traditional cataloging strategies into digital catalog. And so our platform is one of I suppose a few that would be used, but essentially the feed is now, or in the Facebook feed for a retailer, it's now used as your digital catalog. So you've got your dynamic product feeds reaching the person on their phone while they're at home without any need for going and producing a physical catalog. And so yeah, that's quite a clever but tactical way of using it.
So in terms of businesses, Paul, if we tie it back to, you know, businesses watching this about how they can probably pivot their businesses and start using Facebook. I know, you know, obviously we talked about live video. Our local church and quite a few churches obviously have been live streaming their masses via Facebook and getting quite a good result, good following, which will then obviously lead in, as you were mentioning before, by doing stuff now using the social platforms. You're going to lead into post-COVID with your brand still front and foremost. What about leadership, if we turn to that? So the CEOs, the leaders of organizations that probably maybe have been a little bit social shy in the past, like how important is it for them to sort of start using, you know, the platform a little bit more to get a strong message across, I suppose, of leadership?
Yeah, I think so. I can talk about the platform a bit. I think there's a bigger challenge, to be honest, which isn't Facebook related. It's more, you know, if you think about at the moment, if you go and look into the way employees feel about their executive presence versus the way executives feel that they connect with people, there's a huge gap, right? So people at the moment, especially, this is when leaders of companies, you know, myself included here in Australia, all the way up to Mark, globally for us, obviously, who I think is doing a really good job, by the way, is we have a responsibility now to be communicating and being human and being really honest and open and normal about the way that we talk to our staff and the way that we lead our staff at the moment in companies. And there's a couple of ways to think about that. We need to be optimistic, but we need to be realistic as well, because people don't want any bullshit. Basically, they want to be talked to as humans, and not to be sold. They want to feel like they're engaged and they're informed. Now, through COVID, outside of like people like the World Health Organization and scientists, CEOs are the next most important source of information for employees. And so they want frequency, and they want vulnerability, and they want human contact from a real person, not from a faceless executive, right? And so now is the opportunity for people to pare that back. And I was laughing at the start when you said about, you know, well, we're sitting here and, you know, sometimes it's nice to have that mask of the blazer and the shirt and, you know, and be out for a nice lunch or something like that, right? And we all have that. But actually, when you pare it back to people at home without any makeup on, or the kids running about and the dogs are there, and that's the real person, and that's who people really want. So I think now more than ever is an opportunity for people to lead in that really sort of vulnerable, honest way.
Yeah, it's so true. I think this is an opportunity for I suppose brands to be really transparent and to be honest, because I noticed that there's obviously a lot more organic social happening, you know, as opposed to just paid media, because obviously there are a lot of businesses cutting back on their paid media but increasing their organic. And I think it's so important that, you know, as brands, we want to be transparent. We want to be getting that brand message across, but also using this opportunity to really connect and be honest with the marketplace. And social is a great way to do that because it's seen as that kind of personal connection.
Totally. You know, and obviously there's, I don't know if you've been following any of the kind of DJ sets or the interesting live things and the bands and what have you. I think I seen something did you see the one with Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters, and their live piece? I mean, that's amazing, right? But you've got, I think the one that kicked it off was a guy called he's called D Nice. So the letter D and then N-I-C-E. And he went live on Instagram, and I think there's hundreds of thousands of people ended up on it. Oprah was there, Jay-Z, all the rest of it. And I'll send you a link, actually. He did a piece with the other guy who did it with him. And they were talking about how it's completely changed their opinion of what social media can actually mean. Because to be able to go out and, I suppose, create that sense of fun and enjoyment and brighten people's day up by just clicking a live button straight away and having hundreds of thousands of people at your concert. I mean, amazing, right? And then you're seeing it pop up everywhere. Everybody's doing it, right? But it's just fun, right?
Yeah, and it's also what I've seen, obviously, and generally through Facebook. It's not even like the big bands that are doing it. It's the small little local DJs that are setting up the lights and setting up the music and doing playing a set from their local garage or, you know, somewhere close. It's all about that sharing and keeping that connection alive.
That's right.
So maybe just to finish off with, Paul, let's turn to innovation. What have you kind of seen, because this also is a time where, as I mentioned in the opening of the interview, that a lot of people are kind of pulling back, others are kind of seeing the uncertainty, but others are looking at this as a real opportunity. And besides pivoting, are innovating. What kind of innovations have you seen sort of coming through in the market that we can sort of come out of COVID better than we went in?
Look, the big investments we're going to have for the year ahead will be, for the years ahead, are going to be around product innovation, R&D, et cetera, et cetera. It's like we realize how much people need the right tools to be able to connect both with small businesses, big businesses, people, friends, family. And so what we're looking at doing now, there's some stuff obviously that we're doing around the COVID piece, which is, investing in tools to make sure that we're getting the right information in people's hands, making sure that people can get access to the right things that they need, and then all the way through to connection with friends and family. How do we make that much easier? And so on the friends and family piece, we talked about video, we talked about calling, and the messenger rooms piece is a really big bet for us, because essentially that's a really easy way. People are spending more and more time in these services, more and more time on the internet. There's a real craving to connect and stay close to the things that matter to you and the people that matter. And so messenger rooms, which is just launched in Australia, is a really cool way that we're going to make that interaction so much easier, right? And you're spending time on the platform already. You'll see who else is there. Immediately you can jump into a room and a video call with them. So that's great. And then that extends all the way through other things such as our hardware like Portal and Oculus. So that's a big one. But with something we didn't touch on, which was around small to medium business. I mean, small to medium business is it's the heartbeat of every economy around the world. And our focus is on making sure that we can support the economic revival of small to medium business. I don't know if you've seen the new functionality that's launched in Instagram, but so I go to a local coffee shop, and know the owner well, for Tony down in Balmain. I still go in the morning when I take the dogs out and pick up a coffee. And I was talking to him about this because there's now going to be stickers launched on it, and we'll have actually launched on Instagram, whereby you'll be able to buy a gift card for Tony, or there was a sticker whereby you can order your food directly from Tony, and then that goes through to like a food delivery partner, right? And so we're building all of these tools now to make sure that we can either get more funding into these businesses that are struggling, or that people can just via our platform and services go and order directly from them. And so I was telling him about that, and he was like, happy days, he was all over it. And so like things like that. So getting the right tech built to help people to communicate and connect. Video obviously and calling is a big thing, but then there's a really big part around trying to support these local small businesses and communities to go and actually essentially like not go out of business where possible and help them thrive.
Yeah, that's amazing, Paul. And I think it's showing that, the COVID thing we're going through has actually brought us a little bit closer together. It's made us a lot more of a community. And I think there's a lot of positive things that are coming out of this, that when we all get back to some kind of a new normal, we're probably going to be just that little bit more respectful of each other, a bit more connected with each other.
Did you see finally the thing about the Sergeant Tom, or the guy from the army in the UK? That story? Oh man, this is a cracker. So he basically he's 99, he just turned 100, but he said that for the NHS, he would do this all over our platforms, obviously, but that he would do. And I think this is a really nice way to finish off the piece around where, we're going through something awful, but yet there's so many wonderful examples all over the world whereby humanity is kind of shining through. Now, obviously there's bad stuff as well, but sometimes it's just nice, I think, to reflect on the goodness that exists in the world that we live in. And, and he said he would do 100 laps of his garden before his 100th birthday to try and raise money. And he's done 100 laps of his garden. He's raised tens of millions of pounds, and he got 125,000 birthday cards delivered to him. And there's some beautiful imagery around it of all these cards, and he's going to read every one of them and all the rest. And I was like, good on you, man. It's a good example of somebody, just a 99-year-old man, taking it in his own hands to go and do something really good for the people on the front line, right? And then humanity's turned around and said, good on you, Tom. There's 125,000 people have sent him a birthday card. So I think there's hope out there.
Yeah, it is. That's a beautiful story to end off with, because it really does kind of wrapping up, bring it back to, brands themselves thinking about how they can do more for people, but, obviously being able to connect stronger with your audience. Now's the time to do it. If you haven't done it before, this is that real kind of connection, that the Simon Sinek why you do what you do, that really connects everyone together. I did like as well, you mentioned to me when we spoke about, the background of a lot of stuff that you do at Facebook is around reacting, responding, and then re-emerging.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty good for people to kind of take away with as well during this, that, if you're a business, you maybe just talk us through that just very briefly for businesses that are thinking, how do I use social? How do I get started? How should I be using it during this COVID-19?
Yeah, look, so most, for us, it's not even just, we don't typically just speak to clients about Facebook. We're trying to speak to people about their business, right? And so re-emerging is just, the reality of it is that people are spending, consumers are changing where they're spending their time and what they're doing, right? And so our responsibility for our clients, our industry partners, our agencies, everything like that, is to work out how do we make sure that we can support them as best as possible as they try to re-emerge out of this situation that we're in, right? And so that comes everything from helping to work out, what consumers are doing through insights, all the way through to what role does Facebook have to play to make sure that your brand's getting salience, etc. So it's not just about us; it's about how do we support the industry overall to try and come out of this. Like a good example is that at the minute people aren't traveling, right? The travel industry is going to bounce, and it's going to bounce back really, really heavily because Australia needs tourism, as most countries do, to go and drive their economy. We need people to travel internally. We need people internationally to come here when it's safe to do so. So at the moment, what we're trying to work with there is we're supporting that industry, even though, you've seen stuff around people being stood down and obviously some parts of the industry struggling. That's short term. I think longer term, that's going to really bounce back. And so our job now is supporting them as they build their strategies when they're for the bounce back, right?
Yeah, so true, and we often talk about that as well. And the whole idea of what we're doing through the couch is thinking beyond COVID is what it's going to be. I know China, if you look at where things sort of started, their hard-hit tourism sector is poised for a gradual recovery. They reckon, a record number of 80 million tourists are beginning to return to normality after the recent COVID-19 lockdowns as they start to ease it back in China. So I'm sure you're right. I'm sure there's going to be boom times, and it'll be time to reboot businesses in the near future.
And look, finally, just I know where we are time-wise, but there were the reality of this is that people through this period of time, there is I can't remember it's called like the substitutes, right? And for brands that don't remain important at this period of time for their customer, there are substitutes out there, right? And so it's really more important than ever that people continue to have their brand presence out there, that they transform their models to make sure that they're staying relevant for the consumer, because if they don't, others will. And so, you see many examples of it whereby companies are doing it really well. And you'll see examples whereby people kind of maybe don't adapt quickly enough, right? But salience, cut through, making sure, the transformation is there and your brand is staying relevant. And trying to make sure these substitutes that can come out of nowhere don't end up kind of, winning your consumer, if you like. I think that's important. The GFC showed us it, and it's going to be the same through this as well.
Yeah, and also previous disasters, like when we look back to, crisis like even World War II, they've shown that the brands that continue to be there for people during those hard times of World War II become the market leaders in the future, and the others just kind of disappeared. But it's been awesome to talk to you, Paul McCrory, Group Industry Director of Facebook. Thank you for joining me on your couch, on my couch.
Cheers, Tony. Look after yourself, mate. Nice to see you.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Bye-bye.